My name is Milan and I'm here with,
Boomy.
and today we're going to be discussing what I rated her skills and what she rated her skills in athletics. So to start off with, we'll talk about speed. So I rated her a 7. What did you rate
I
yourself?
personally gave myself a 5
Why did you give yourself a 5?
because the way I did this was based on my own personal speed and like what I think I am. I also compared it to the rest of the people in my group. So when I'm sprinting, I am quite fast, I'll say that. But when I'm, say for example, if we're having timed runs or if we're sprinting as a group, I tend to be not the last one, but I'm near the end. So I'm normally one of the last ones to finish compared to the rest of the group.
See, the reason I gave you a 7, because when I've seen you sprint in other sports like core, I've seen that you're relatively faster than everyone else. But in training, I don't really look at you sprint because I'm focused on my own group.
Mm-hmm.
But should we compromise and say a 6 for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a 6. So next we'll move on to flexibility, which I rated you a 8.
Wow. I gave myself a 7 for flexibility.
Why did you give yourself a 7?
Probably because when I'm sprinting, I feel like I could. How do you explain it? Like I could use my posture a bit better
And stretch further.
and makes wider strides when I'm sprinting, which would probably make me a bit faster as well.
See, I rated you an 8 because I know you can touch your toes. And you can even put your palms on the floor. And in sprinting, that shows that you have flexible hamstrings and glutes as well, because that means you have more like range of motion, which means your stride length will increase. So that's what I based it upon. But I think
I'd probably stick with a 7.
stick with a 7. Okay. Next is muscular strength. What did you rate yourself?
So I know I'm not very strong, which is why I gave myself a 4.
See, I gave you a 5 because similar, but I know you don't have a lot of upper body strength compared to your lower body. So it's a bit disproportionate. But when it comes to lower body, when I've seen you like do weighted squats with a barbell, your 1 rep max isn't that high compared to others. What would you say?
Yeah, so for me, I'd say, even though my legs are probably, in general, legs are the strongest part of your body, but I based it upon overall body strength. So I know my upper body is much weaker than my lower body, so I took that and I compared them both together. And say when you're sprinting, you've got to have quite a tight, strong core, right? So you don't like run with your hips going all over the place.
Yeah.
And I think if I had better strength, then my technique would improve. But overall, like my leg strength, I've got pretty good leg strength. But yeah, overall, I'm not the strongest of people.
It's just like your core strength instead of just your legs.
Yeah, my core strength is improving though.
And next is muscular endurance, which I rated you a 6 on.
I rated myself a 5.
Why? That's the question.
So in training, we tend to do a circuit towards the end of each session. And I can cope with it. But when it gets if we do, say for example, a minute and a half plank or something, I start getting tired towards the minute mark. Whereas the rest of, I'm always comparing myself, not in a bad way, but with the rest of my group, saying, okay, let me try and beat this person, let me try and beat that person, but it never happens. So in that sense, I feel like my muscular endurance is decent, but not the best. And then if we're doing, for example, sit-ups or squats or something, depending on the exercise, my muscular endurance is good, but then some of them it's not so good.
See, I rated you a 6 because I know that you're good at like doing 400 meters and like 450 meter races and all of that. And when it comes to like pulsing activities, I know you're decent at it, and like you can last on a wall sit a lot more than other people.
Yeah, the wall sit I can last. I think the longest I've ever done is 3.5 minutes. No, actually, no. In training, we did a timed thing, so we did like timed circuits, so it lasts as long as you can. Plank wasn't so great for me. I managed to last 1:45.
So it's sort of that your lower body muscular endurance is a lot better than
Yeah.
your upper body.
And then when we did the wall sit, I think I managed to last 7 or 8 minutes, which is the longest I've ever managed to do it for.
I mean, that's a very good score. I can't last past like 2.5 minutes because then my legs start shaking and everything. It's a bit mad. So on that, should we say a 6 because your endurance is improving? Alright, the next one is reaction time, which I also rated you a 6.
See, I went higher for that. I gave myself an 8.
Why do you think that?
Because at the start of, if we're doing races in training, or even just general practice, to start the race, the coach always has his whistle. So whenever he blows a whistle, I'm always straight out, and I've got like a good starting pace. But then afterwards, it begins to slow down a bit. But in terms of being able to react to the stimulus, being the whistle, I'm pretty good at that.
See, I gave you a 6 because on the times that I've seen you versus other people in your group, the times I have seen, majority of them, you're out of the blocks last. But that's just my subjective view. I don't see you in every training session though, so...
That's fair enough.
I know you're explosive, it's just... like, I haven't seen you get out of the blocks as fast as other people in your group.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm the first one out, but I wouldn't say I'm the last one out. So I think I'm probably in the middle of the group, taking into consideration that I don't always use the blocks compared to everyone else, but when I do, so when I'm using blocks, because I'm not fully used to them, I'm a bit slower with reacting. But when I'm going straight from ground start, then I'd say I've got really
used
good
to
reaction.
pushing off from an angle, sort of like flat.
Yeah.
Okay, so to compromise,
give us 7.
7. Yeah. Next is low foot placement, which I rated you a 4 out of 10 because I know when you come out the blocks, if you compare your first 4 strides or first 3 strides to sort of other sprinters in your group and even some elite sprinters, you can tell that they drag their feet across the ground for the first 2, but also keep their foot very millimeters off the ground in the 3rd stride. Whereas you, in your first stride, keep relatively low, but then on the 2nd and 3rd and 4th, you tend to lift your feet up a bit more, which is why I gave you a 4 out of 10. That's from what I've noticed.
Fair enough. I've given not so much higher, but I've given myself a 6 for that. Purely because, similar to you, I would have given it higher if I kept my foot placement lower for more strides than just the first couple. But I think because I'm still getting used to the whole sprinting thing, because I started quite late.
Yeah.
But I think because I'm still getting quite used to it, over time I think my foot placement will be better when I'm doing my first initial strides. But yeah, so a 6 was given by me.
So just compromise a 5. Okay. Next is power, which I gave you a similar score to muscular strength because they work hand in hand. I gave you a 6 for that out of 10.
I gave myself a 5 for that, which is similar as strength. For strength, I gave myself a 4.
So power is from what I've based on your vertical jump test scores, which I saw last year in Tom's unit. And yeah, it was, I think, good, average to good, your score.
Average.
Yeah, so that's why I based it.
For me, I based it on that as well, but also when we're doing, for example, if we do Wednesday sessions tend to be more power based, so we tend to do like bounding over hurdles and plyometric jumps and everything. And I'm not the best at that. I tend to stumble over the hurdles quite a bit. So in terms of building up that power from a standing position, I'm not the best at. But when it comes to starting off the sprint, for example, then I know I've got that power in my legs, which is why I get that further push. But that's why I went in the middle, because I wouldn't say I've got the best power.
So yours was, sorry, what, a 5?
5, yeah.
You stick with a 5 because there's room for improvement for you.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can progress to 6, 7, 8 after. Right, the next one is use of knees, and I gave you an 8 for this.
I gave myself a 9 for this. Purely because when I'm running, I do tend to have quite high knees.
For me, it's based on when you first started athletics to now. Before, you never used to put your knees higher.
That's true.
But recently I've seen that you keep your knees like high, so it's sort of 90 degrees.
Yeah, and since doing that, I can tell you I've improved my posture when running. So keeping a straight, tall posture.
Upright.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I've also managed to improve my technique and speed because of the use of high knees.
So
should we go with an 8 for that?
Let's go with an 8. The next one is use of arms, which I rated you a 6.
I rated myself a 9 for that as well.
Whoa, a 9.
The reason for that is because I have seen a massive improvement in my use of arms since I started athletics, roughly this time last year, compared to now.
See, when I've seen you run, yeah, instead of moving your arms, what's it called? Like straight, like from your eye socket to trouser pocket, that's what we call it, socket to pocket. I've seen that you move your arms across your body, which is not really what you're supposed to do. But what you're saying, you've seen an improvement. Again, I haven't really seen you sprint a lot, but when I have seen you, I've seen you cross your arms across your body.
Yeah, see, since I'd say November time, my coach has been drilling me, saying, you need to stop running as if you're holding a handbag in both hands. Because when you're holding a handbag, you generally tend to put it across your body. But yeah, my coach has been telling me for quite a while to start. He gave me some drills to do, which worked on my arm technique. So he made me hold a baton in both hands and make me move it from, as you said, socket to pocket.
Oh, I had to do that.
And then he's like, make sure. And then he got me to get rid of the batons. And then he's like, okay, I want you to almost stroke your ear right up to your hip.
Okay. Yeah.
Rather than going across. And since he got me to do that, I can tell you I've definitely stopped putting my arms across my body, which is why I gave myself.
So I rated you a 6 and you rated yourself
a 9.
a 9. Right.
She got 7.
I would say 7. Concentration. I rated you a 7 out of 10 for this.
Again, I put myself as a 9.
It's not too bad of a difference. Why do you give yourself a 9?
The reason is because every time in training, say for example, if we're competing against each other, I never lose my focus. So I'm always like, okay, I'm just going to try my best, whether I beat everyone, whether I don't beat everyone, whether I come last, whether I come first. It doesn't matter to me as long as I've stayed focused and tried my best. And then that concentration, because I keep that right from the start, it helps me with my reaction time, which is why I gave myself quite high for that as well. Because by concentrating, it made me be aware of what I needed to be aware of, not what everyone else was doing, not how everyone else prepared for the start of the race, etc.
No, see, I gave you a 7. I gave you a 7 because when I put myself in your head and I would have seen people running past you, I would have thought that's like affecting your concentration. and then that can affect your technique.
See, that's the thing. When they say if I'm ahead of everyone, but then they begin to overtake me, it doesn't affect my concentration. It just makes me want to train harder so I can be closer to them or beat them. But yeah.
Let's go with an 8 for that compromise.
Straight in the middle.
The next one is arousal levels before racing. So arousal level before racing, I rated you a 6 out of 10.
I put myself as a 6 as well.
Why?
Because I'd say I'm moderately, my arousal levels are moderately high, purely because it's like it's a mix of nerves, excitement, everything. So it's just all of that comes together, and it just kind of boosts my performance a little bit, but not too much.
I think that, because both of us rated 6 out of 10, that works hand in hand with concentration, because sort of being in that moderate range of arousal, when looking at the inverted U theory, it sort of shows that having moderate arousal puts you at the optimum level of performance, and that can help your concentration actually, and kind of increase your attentional focus so it's more positive. So we'll put a 6 for that. The next one is relaxed shoulders, in which I gave you a 7 out of 10.
I gave myself a 7 as well.
I think 7's reasonable, because normally when you're racing you do have relaxed shoulders, and I can see a lot of motion.
I'm not stiff, like you can tell my arms move freely rather than
it's
like
just
a robot.
Occasionally you do tighten up a bit, like your traps tighten up and there's less movement. That might be when you've been put in a competitive scenario.
I think that happens mainly when I'm put into that situation without knowing beforehand. So say for example during training, the coach is like, okay, we're just going to do a few practice runs, blah blah blah, we're going to do a stadium run, we're going to do a few 150s, and then out of nowhere he says, okay, at the end of the training, like he says it right at the end, he's like, okay, now you're going up against this person, go. So when I'm not prepared for it, that's when I start to tense up. Other than that, I think I'm alright.
So a 7 for that. The next 3 will be tactical aspects. So the first one is speeding up when your opponents are tired. For this I gave you a 3. And this is mainly based on like 200 to 400 meter running.
For this I gave myself a 5. So not too much higher than you either, but not too low either.
See, I gave you a 3 because I've seen when your opponents overtake you, you sort of stick at your same pace, you don't run a bit faster. But again, I don't know how it feels for you though.
See, when I'm... Go on, carry on.
Because for you, when you run, it may feel like when they pass you, you may increase like your stride and that. But just from visually, you can't really see that.
That's fair enough. I get what you mean. Visually, you won't be able to see it. But for me, if I've seen that I'm quite, not far behind, but a little bit behind some of the faster athletes in my group, then if I see them getting tired, I tend to become more motivated, which makes me want to like speed up a little bit. But in terms of speeding up, I don't really pick up the pace as much. Instead, I tend to increase my stride length. If that makes sense. So rather than becoming faster,
so
I'm taking small
more
steps.
power into the floor. Yeah.
So instead of using shorter strides and increasing the pace, I keep the pace the same, but increase the strides. That's what I rated this upon.
So what did you give yourself again?
A 5.
A 4 would be suitable for a compromise. The next one is shouting and jumping before a race, and this I gave you a 2.
I also gave myself a 2.
Because I know you don't really do this.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever shouted or jumped or anything before a race. I just try to get in the zone.
I think this is just a technique to get into some people's heads before a race, and it's a tactic that a lot of coaches say you can use. But I've never seen you do this.
I think the main thing I do is just shake off the nerves. But other than that, that's only like a couple of seconds. other than that, I just get on with it.
So 2 out of 10 is fine.
Yep.
The last tactical aspect is getting in front of the person on the right lane when you're running on the bend. So say we're doing 200 meters, you're on lane 5 and the person next to you is in lane 6. It's just about getting in front of them, and that's a tactical aspect because it can get in their head that they're not good enough. And for that, I rated you a 4 out of 10.
I gave myself a 5. No, a 6, sorry.
I gave you a 4 mainly because what's it called? I do see that sometimes you overtake people, but a lot of the time they sort of
Overtake me.
overtake you.
Yeah, I see that as well. It's just the reason I gave myself a 6 for that. Because for me, it depends on the way I'm feeling. So if I'm feeling quite energized and motivated and ready to go, then I tend to become faster at the bend so I can overtake them and get that lead. But then on the days I'm not feeling so great, not feeling like, if I'm feeling like I'm not in the right mindset to actually compete and sprint in training, then those are the times I won't overtake them, which is why I gave the 6.
I get that when I don't feel like there's adrenaline in my legs.
Yeah,
And
so
then-
it's like that.
yeah.
When you've not got that rush of adrenaline, you're just like, I can't do this properly. Even though you can, but your mindset is telling you can't do it properly.
Yeah. So to compromise, a 5, if that's alright with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
The last one is a technical aspect, and that is ground contact time, in which I gave you a 6 out of 10.
I gave myself a 7 out of 10.
Why?
The reason for that is because beforehand you explained how to rate this one specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So you said the higher the number you put means the more time you spend on the ground, which is why I put a 7, because as I said before, I tend to use bigger strides, right? And that means I'll have a bit longer on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And even when training, I've been with your group a couple of times, and your coach even told me try and pick up the pace of your strides. Try not to spend too much. Like as soon as you hit down, push off rather than hit down, put your full foot down, then hit off. And even my coach has said that to me, which is why I gave myself a 7.
See, I gave you a 6 because I feel like I'm basing this on improvement I've seen. Because when you first started athletics in about May last year, I think, say April last year, you did have a lot of like ground contact time. But as you progressed, I've seen that you push off a bit more quickly.
Yeah.
So if you did this performance profile last year, I would have rated that an 8.
If we did this last year, all of these would have been much different.
But I've seen an improvement, that's why I gave you a 6. And that is it. Thank you for doing this with me.
No problem.
And yeah.